The universe of Middle-earth is populated by several fantastic races, each with their own culture, personality, and even different powers. Today, we will explore the origins and characteristics of some of these Middle-earth races. What's up, my friends? It's Arcade Word here. If you're new to this channel and want to subscribe, just click the button down below. And if you're enjoying this video, give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it, alright? And be sure to follow me on Instagram too, where I post some really cool pictures. The link is in the description below. But anyway, let's talk about Middle-earth. Just to be clear, I'm basing this video on both the books of Middle-earth and the movies, because they adapt the story in a very faithful way. We can see characteristics of these Middle-earth races in both media. So to begin understanding the origins of the Middle-earth races, we first need to understand the creation of the world in which they live. In the beginning, there was Eru, the supreme being of the universe, responsible for the creation of all existence. First, through his thoughts, Eru created the Ainur, primordial spirits tasked with creating the world alongside him. Then, Eru created Arda, the physical universe, where things exist in material form, and the Ainur possessed powers and gifts for creation. Some of them went to Arda to shape the creation of the universe, and these Ainur were called the Valar and Maiar. Eventually, Arda, the realm of Earth, was created, and the Ainur went there to shape its elements. Oceans were formed, mountains were sculpted, and trees were planted, until finally, when the last star was placed in the sky, another form of life, created directly by Eru, awoke on Earth. A small group of elves awoke near the lake of Cuivianen, and under the light of the stars, they awakened from the sleep of Ilúvatar. The elves spent time living in the region near the lake, and over time, this initial tribe of elves divided into clans scattered across Middle-earth. Thus, several different lineages of elves emerged, with distinct cultures. For example, the Noldor were great builders, while the Teleri became excellent sailors. Despite the differences between these lineages, there are many characteristics common to all elves. Eru admired his creation of elves greatly, as they were the first terrestrial race he created. Therefore, he made elves naturally very powerful and beautiful, in a way similar to the Ainur, who were very powerful spirits as described even in the book The Silmarillion. The relations of the Ainur on Earth were chiefly with the elves, for Ilúvatar made them more like to the Ainur, though less in might and stature. To clarify, Ilúvatar is the Elvish name for Eru. This admiration that Eru had for elves justifies the extraordinary abilities that this race possesses. Among all these powers of elves, the greatest of them surely is immortality. They do not die from common diseases and also stop aging when they become adults.
Immortal, wisest and fairest of all beings.
That's why Elrond has existed for thousands of years, as he himself says, without aging. But elves are not invulnerable. They can die from wounds, poisons, and other external causes. Even after death, the spirits of elves can still incarnate, as described in the Silmarillion. And at death, they are gathered in the halls of Mandos in Valinor, from which they may, in time, return. But there are more specific cases, such as Arwen, a half-elf who chose to have a mortal life alongside Aragorn.
I choose a mortal life.
Other abilities of elves involve heightened senses, such as Legolas's vision that sees miles away. And elves can move very lightly, managing to even run on top of the snow without leaving footprints on the ground. That's why elves are so agile, as we saw in that incredible scene from The Lord of the Rings, where Legolas climbs an elephant with ease. And since Eru made elves similar to the Ainur, elves end up having natural talents for magic. They can heal as Elrond healed Frodo's wounds caused by the Nazgul and in some cases, manipulate elements, like Elrond did when he conjured a flood to overthrow the Nazgul. Finally, elves can also give magical properties to artifacts, such as Galadriel's vial, that she gave as a gift to Frodo. This vial carried the light of Arendil, a power that was used by the hobbits to defeat Larachna. These are some of the characteristics of elves, the first terrestrial race created by Eru, but they were not the only children of the Creator. Men were the second terrestrial race created by Eru, and the event that marked the awakening of men in Arda was the creation of the sun, made precisely to illuminate the world and make human life possible, as it is described in the Silmarillion. For the sun was made as a sign for the awakening of men. And at the first dawn of the sun, men awoke in Hildorian, a region located in the east of Middle-earth. Humans did not have the same powers and beauty of elves, but they were created with another gift that Eru gave only to them: mortality. Men were mortal. They aged and could die of diseases, unlike elves. I know that death seems more like a curse than a gift, but Eru's intention in giving mortality to men was to create ambition in them, to change their own destiny, to conquer new knowledge and enjoy the freedom of life. The life of men is short, so they have to live in a much more intense way than the elves. The imminence of death motivates men, so much so that King Theoden speaks about death in his battle speech. The fate of the elves was always linked to Arda. They were born, died, and incarnated back to Arda. Their fate was already very well traced from the beginning, but man had the chance to change his own destiny, and this was the gift that Eru gave to humans: freedom. Eru says in the Silmarillion, "Now I will give the Atani, men, a new gift." He thus determined that the hearts of men should seek something beyond the world, that in it they should not find rest. This ambitious search of man, this race against the clock of life, makes the human society of Middle-earth so different from the elves. After men awoke, they divided into several lineages and groups, much like what happened with the elves. Some lineages of men even received a gift from the Valar, the creator spirits of the world. They increased the longevity of men as a reward for having fought alongside the elves in wars. The Lord of the Rings, Appendix, says, "For though a great longevity was granted to them, at first 3 times that of lesser men, they must remain mortal." These men were the Númenóreans, who lived on the island of Númenor. They came to live initially around 300 to 400 years of age. That's why Aragorn died at 210 years of age, because he had the blood of Númenor in his veins. The most interesting thing about men is that, in the same way that death is a gift to them, it can also be seen as a curse, because it was the reason for some temptations of the human race. In the past, men were not content with the longevity of the Valar, and they tried to conquer true immortality, sailing to the promised lands of immortality, which were forbidden to humans. Because of this greed, the island of Númenor was destroyed, and the gift of longevity was taken from men. This natural greed of men for power made them fall into Sauron's temptations, to the point of becoming specters of evil at his service. In the end, men managed to overcome these difficulties, using the gift of ambition to fight for the good of Middle-earth and expelled evil from it, initiating the era of the dominion of men. But there is still another race that was an important ally to the elves and to men. Let's understand the origin of the dwarves. First, we need to go back to that time, when the Ainur were still shaping Middle-earth. Ole was the name of the Valar responsible for shaping all the substances of which the world is made. He was a blacksmith, and appreciated any kind of manual work, from the gigantic walls of the mountains to the gold and small precious stones from the depths of the earth. Ole liked creating these things so much that he began to want to have apprentices to whom he could pass on his knowledge. The elves and humans had not yet awakened, and Ole became impatient. He decided to create his own children, without anyone knowing. In the hidden darkness of Middle-earth, Ole made a small group of dwarves, very similar to himself. They were made to build with their own hands, just as Ole did. As at that time there were evil spirits in Middle-earth, Ole made the dwarves naturally very resistant. But it turns out that Eru himself discovered Ole's clandestine creation and questioned what his intention was in disobeying the father of all. Don't you realize that these creatures now have life of their own and speak with their own voices? And so Eru spared the lives of the dwarves, but established that they would sleep at that moment and only be awakened after the awakening of the elves in Middle-earth. The dwarves slept for several years until the elves awoke in Middle-earth. The oldest dwarf of all, Durin, wandered after awakening until he found the caves that would be the mines of Moria in the future. Durin made his abode in these caves, thus beginning a long lineage of dwarf families in Middle-earth. A striking feature of the dwarves is their appearance, which is stocky and robust. Aula made the dwarves in this way so that they would resist the dangers of Middle-earth. According to the Silmarillion, it describes dwarves as hard as stone, stubborn, steadfast in friendship, and able to endure fatigue, hunger, and wounds with more bravery than all other peoples. Due to this natural resistance, the dwarves live even longer than common humans, living up to more than 250 years. They also inherited the gifts of Aule, the smith god, and are therefore naturally talented in forging and building. The Silmarillion says that dwarf armors are made in such a way that they do not rust and shine eternally, as if freshly polished. An example of this is the mithril armor, which is resistant and was made by a dwarf. The weapons made by the dwarves are some of the most incredible in all of Middle-earth. The Narsil sword, for example, which cut off Sauron's one-ring finger, was made by a dwarf blacksmith named Telchar. And finally, the architecture of the dwarves is also notable, with the construction of halls, palaces, castles, and mines of an unmatched magnitude and beauty throughout Middle-earth. But this taste and talent for construction also has a negative side in dwarves, because sometimes they end up becoming too obsessed with treasures, precious stones, gold, and things like that, as happened with Thorin Oakenshield at the end of The Hobbit, when he didn't want to share part of his treasure to help rebuild the City of the Lake, which had been destroyed by the City of the Lake. But despite this nature, the dwarves are above all a strong, courageous people, and most importantly, always steadfast in friendship. These were some characteristics and parts of the origin of some of the fantastic races of Middle-earth. Even within a world of fantasy, these races have totally changed the way of telling stories here in our real world. So guys, this was my video talking about some of the races of Middle-earth. I'm always very unsure about which of these three main races is my favorite. I'm in doubt between elves, dwarves, and humans. Elves are made to be super powerful, and they are really amazing at everything they do. Dwarves are very strong and have an amazing design in everything they create. I can't decide. Decide in the comments which of the three races you like the most. If you liked the video, please leave a like. I liked it. It helped me a lot. I really appreciate it.
Shall not pass!